guys, welcome or welcome back to my channel. This video is going to be about Paige Michaelchuck and why she was always insecure and why her slapping Marco makes actually complete and total sense. So let's dive right on into it. Paige Michaelchuck is our resident mean girl of season 1 who is best friends to Hazel and Spinner's girlfriend. We are immediately thrown into a weird friendship between her, Ashley, and Terry. When Paige overhears Ashley and Terry talk about Spinner, she automatically gets jealous. When she feels threatened by a guy not liking her, she does a despicable act by getting Terry drunk. Immediately, we get a sense of Paige feeling insecure to Terry. She genuinely likes Spinner, yet was devious how she went about it to marking her territory, marking her our resident mean girl of the show. So Paige fits into this really specific mean girl archetype, and these kind of characters behave this way due to feeling a lack of something, and they recognize what they lack in someone else that they have. Thus, they lash out and displace their emotions onto someone else. So they feel jealous, insecure by how the other person is or received to the world versus how they're received to the world and how people interact around them. So between Terry and Paige, Terry is seen as like the sweet girl. Ashley does, dog her out. But Terry as a character, she is a sweet character who is genuinely nice. She's friends with Spinner. She's cool with Jimmy. Hazel doesn't seem to have a problem with her. She's generally just a nice person to be around. And Paige doesn't really have that same predicament when it comes to other people. So obviously, because we're thrown into their freshman year, we don't know what it was like for them when they were younger. But we kind of get a sense of Paige was probably more of the, I wouldn't say rebellious of them, but she was one of those characters that probably spoke a little bit out of pocket. And probably had a little bit of a self-centeredness towards herself and just how she interacts with other people, how she interacts with guys, and where she puts her friendships. So kind of like a pre-pick-me before actually diving into like the pick-me side. So maybe she could have discussed how her friends look towards in front of guys and like dog them out for it or anything like that, or just made them feel insecure in their own way. And you kind of see that interaction between her, Ashley, and Terry when she says, "New year, new look, new Paige." And she kind of like mocks Ashley for putting up posters already for to become president for their freshman year. She says it's admirable. You kind of get a hint right there that they just started to differ over some span of time. And so Ashley kind of sees herself as more type A, more strict in what she wants to do versus Paige, who seems to be more accustomed to more fashion and other feminine traits versus Ashley having this focus in academics. So I feel like you kind of see that kind of dynamic between them and how Ashley feels towards Paige and how Paige feels towards Ashley, which is very, very, very on point with how girls interact with each other through all stages of life, really, especially for us millennials, where obviously we get I'm not like other girls. Like, I don't like makeup. I don't go to the mall. I don't gossip. I write fan fiction, or like I focus on this. I like chess. I play video games. Always trying to make themselves as an other to appeal to pretty much the male gaze, essentially, but in different ways of doing it. But it's ultimately still coming to the same conclusion and kind of being spiteful towards each other. So you really see this dynamic between them. So Paige does this stuff to feel important or chosen, so she harms those around them. So with Paige being this mean girl archetype, there's this need to feel important or chosen, so they harm those around them mentally, verbally, physically, and emotionally. Since Paige wasn't a fighter in the introduction that we see her as, she used verbal assault towards her peers, and kind of like a manipulation tactic with getting Terry drunk. She didn't say outright, but I'm like, "Oh my God, you're an ugly fat pig, drink," or whatever. But she does manipulate and coax Terry into loosening up by trying to psych Terry out into thinking like, "Oh, maybe Spinner won't like you," or whatever. And being like, "Well, why don't we just like chill out, hang out, let's loosen up a little bit before we go." And Terry, being who she is, she goes along with it, not seeing that Paige is trying to harm her in any type of way. But obviously after the dance, with the aftermath of the whole situation, Terry does kind of get the hint of like, oh, she did this on purpose. So we ultimately get that to the end. And so using that alcohol was a way for Terry to embarrass herself in front of Spinner without Paige doing anything outright. So she keeps her hands and her nose clean, you know. She's not doing anything active to be the bad person. So when Terry's drunk at the party, she's like, oh my God, Terry, I told her not to drink, you know, that type of thing. Like I said, very like pre-pick-me girl behavior before anything traumatizing or anything, moving on towards other aspects of it. Let's move on to Paige Michaelchuck and the blank kittens, because I don't think I can say the word. I'm not even going to try it. I'm not monetized on here whatsoever, but YouTube could still come get me, I guess. So anyway, so let's just talk about Terry and Ashley first before diving into the PMS group. So Ashley started to dive into music after her and Jimmy broke up, after the whole was it LSD? Yeah, after the whole ecstasy, not after the whole ecstasy incident and her calling everybody out, calling Paige a hag, blah 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 blah. After that, Ashley reinvents herself and she actually starts to focus on what was this before? So let's talk about Paige Michaelchuck and the blank kittens. YouTube, I'm not monetized over here on YouTube, but they could probably still come and get me. So I'm not going to say the word. But before we dive into PMS, let's talk about Terry and Ashley. So Ashley has always been our kind of character who she is our Emma before our Emma. Does that make sense? Because Emma is our main character, but Ashley, Paige, Terry, Spinner, Jimmy, and Hazel, they're all a grade above her. So I feel like she's our Emma before Emma. She's our pre-Emma. So very much self-centered. I won't say narcissistic, but she does have a lot of just self-righteousness. There we go. She's very self-righteous and tends to demean Terry with her comments, and she'll quickly like apologize, but she still does it. So when Ashley decides to perform for the cabaret, she writes a song and Terry makes a suggestion to speed up the tempo. And Ashley's like, yeah, but I feel like this is the best one. Like, come on, you got to agree, right? And so Terry's just like, oh, fine, whatever. And so she just becomes accustomed and bows down to Ashley's opinion of the song and singing along with it, regardless of how she feels. So this is where I point out that Ashley and Paige are more alike than we actually think. Like, let's just be quite honest with just how they treat Terry, but also how they interact with other people. Ashley's not the kindest person, but she isn't as she's not as direct as Paige is, but they're the same coin, just different sides. It's different aspects of it. It's like if Ashley's like the lowercase version and Paige is uppercase. Like, they're literally the same person. So when Terry is into the mysticism, she is really into tarot, which, thank God. I love you, girl. I love her for that. Paige tries to get Terry to persuade Ashley to do a trio instead of a duo and to do it Terry's way. So Paige is pretty much teaching Terry her manipulative techniques, but using it to Terry's ability and what Terry is comfortable with, because Ashley is open to that type of stuff a little bit because I think she said her aunt read tea leaves. And at first she's like, Terry, well, you're not a professional. It's like, well, you don't really need to be a professional to read cards. It's all about energy and it's a lifelong practice. So you're constantly learning and you're constantly growing. So everyone is technically an amateur at one point, and as you learn, you're still an amateur in a way, like you just know more, but there's always so much to learn about spirituality that it's not a concrete timeline of what that looks like for gaining knowledge. Like, it's not like, okay, yeah, I know all of this now, I'm a master. It's like you're still learning. Even if you've been practicing for like 15 years, there's still some new things maybe you haven't learned. Other, new books that come out that teach you new things, new techniques. There's a bunch of deities and that you have never connected with. other religions, other cultures type of thing. Like, there's always something to learn. So Ashley got on my nerves with that, to be quite honest. But when Terry uses her cards to persuade Ashley to do a trio and to up the tempo of the tempo of the song, Paige feels a lot more powerful. She feels a lot more valued with having someone on her side, because she has Spinner as a boyfriend, but she doesn't see Spinner as an equal, essentially. That's how their relationship is very much portrayed, but we'll get into that later on. And so with this high that Paige is on with being to be valued, to be perceived in a positive way, she continues that high when Toby's mom comes to the parent-teacher conference and Paige puts on her PMS persona. Like, you see her, she's all dressed up as if she's going to MTV. Like, she's wearing a sparkly top. Her hair is done in a specific way, while Ashley is very professional in her attire. But Paige is very much putting on that persona to attract Toby's mom, and she fails again, and Terry gets the attention that she craves. So there is that high need of validity and power that Paige doesn't feel. She got a sense of power at the beginning with getting Spinner before Terry could get to him, and getting the power over Ashley to have Terry on her side to change up the song and to change up the group. Because Paige really just inserted herself into this musical duo without actually, she kind of acts, but it's Paige, you know, it's very much like, I'm going to tell you, and then you'll be like, oh, okay. And you don't even realize that you have let her in without her even asking. She's very persuasive that way. She's very conniving and very cunning. And not like in a terrible way, but it's very effective for Paige as a character. Moving on to Spinner and their relationship. So, like I said, Paige has a sense of power and control over Spinner. She doesn't see him as an equal. But before saying all that, I feel like the relationship very much gives a black cat and golden retriever relationship. And I'm not saying because a black cat and a golden retriever relationship is inherently imbalanced and that the other person, that one person views the other person as less than, because that's not inherently true. But that's just the nature of what I see there as their relationship as. And then later on, diving into it more, you do see that Paige feels like a sense of control over him. And so with her feeling a little bit like disheveled with Spinner being how he is, Paige feels like, you know what? I can get better attention. I can get something better. So she goes after Dean, and Dean gives her the attention. And then obviously he grapes her, and she ends up getting harmed in that. And so that attention that she received is negative, and that's not what she wanted. She wanted that positive attention. So it's not Paige's fault. Obviously it's Dean's fault, because why the fuck are you doing that? You should be in jail for life, castrated too. I'm just saying, that's just my opinion. But she sought that attention, and the attention backfired to something extremely harmful, costing her pretty much her mental health, her relationships with other people, especially romantic relationships too. That's a huge factor, a huge thing that she went through. So to be in a romantic relationship after that hurdle is going to be extremely hard. And so we see that later on in the show when she goes back to Spinner, and the relationship just completely changes, especially after she crashes Spinner's car, and the relationship just completely flips. And it's not necessarily like he's a black cat and she's a golden retriever. It just flips in the power dynamic. And so that's why I say Paige saw Spinner as below her. She didn't see them as equals, because you can see how immediately how that reversed, and how she is now in Spinner's position with feeling devalued, and not to have a positive correlation to that attention that she is used to having. And so now Spinner is top dog, essentially. Even Craig, out of all characters on the show, clocks it when he starts to berate Paige pretty much at work, telling her how to do the popcorn. Even Alex is like, do you want to punch in the face with the side of that popcorn, because you deserve it. And Craig is just very much like, dude, you're being an asshole. And rightfully so, he is. And so when they get into a fight over not Paige, and when they get into a fight over Manny, that's when Paige really does see the whole dynamic has changed between them. That all the attention that she is getting is not genuine anymore, because when they fight, they're fighting over Manny. She's not getting that attention. She's not getting that validity, and everything in her life just comes crashing down because she hasn't got that positive attention, that reassurance that she's always craved and always needed. Moving on to college years. So this one is a little bit different in terms of Paige being insecure, but in the way of academics, which I feel like is a completely different shift for a lot of characters. So we don't know how Paige was academically when she was at Degrassi. We can guess and assume that she was like a pretty good student. She wasn't failing anything. She wasn't academically gifted or anything like that, but I feel like she was just a really good student. But when she got to college, she started to struggle, and I feel like this is a factor of her being insecure in a way of how she adjusted to a new stage of life. Because before, when she was younger in high school, middle school, grouping that entire time together, she was popular. She was top dog. She had the confidence. People wanted to be her, she had Spinner running after her. She had that attention. And then getting to college, it's completely different. And not to focus on like her love life, because that wasn't the main focus of Paige's life in college. It was mainly academic. It was just the fact that she was struggling very, very hard to keep up with everything going on in school. She had a hard time completing assignments, keeping up in class. She had a tough professor, which is one of like the most I can't say deadliest things, but one of the most threatening things to do as a freshman college student. Because personally, I had this kind of experience, not necessarily like Paige, but I actually had a religion professor, and all the professors, all of the students on campus, so even professors were telling me to drop this guy's class. And I didn't, because I said, y'all are that scared of him? They're like, people fail, and you're taking him your freshman year. That's kind of scary. Like, thankfully so, it was his last year teaching there. He went off to teach in London, so I was fine. I think I got like a B+ out of his class, but he wasn't a tough teacher, I would say. He wasn't a tough professor. He was just very much hoping that you would actually take the time and think about what religion looks like to you, and actually sit with your beliefs and really think about it, not just get sucked into what you were raised into growing up, really trying to challenge us as students. So that's what he was doing. But for Paige, her professor was a bitch. Like, she was just hard for like no fucking reason. And like how they say in high school, they're like, oh, your professors won't let you get away with this in high school. I mean, in college, like they won't let you do this. They won't let you do that. Granted, some professors are tough, but there are a lot of them that just don't give a shit because they still get paid either way. And you're fucking up your own education and funds if you're staying there too long. Oh my God, my eye. So with having such a tough transition, she saw that her peers, she saw that Ellie had a pretty good transition. She really just struggled with the fact that Jessie was Jessie and she was she. But everyone else had a pretty decent transition, but Paige had such a tough one. So she completely broke down. We all know how she dropped out. And she just couldn't keep, it was really difficult for her. So I feel like that was another aspect of her feeling insecure and not having the same adjustment as everyone else when going to college. Now let's get into Degrassi Goes Hollywood. So obviously, you know, the whole point of Degrassi Goes Hollywood is for Manny to get to Hollywood so she can be in the movie with Jay and Silent Bob and just live her dreams, really. You have the Studes going there to perform. Yeah, I mean, that's literally the entire premise of the movie, is getting Manny there and the Studes performing and Paige being a bitch. Like, that's really the entirety of Degrassi Goes Hollywood. There's nothing more to that. I don't care about the Ellie and Craig subplot. Like, no, they're not going to acknowledge that. But really, I feel like for Paige, the fact that she went to Hollywood, um, it makes sense in a way, because I feel like for her as a character at the beginning, when we go back to her being at Degrassi, she never really had like a clear cut plan of what she wanted to do. Um, she did like have like aspire a little bit to be like a TV personality, because she did want to be casted by Toby's mom. But then after that, we really don't get a sense of who Paige wants to be when she's older. Like, we don't really focus on that. So then when we get to her in college, she's just struggling really hard with just even keeping up with basic schoolwork. So we don't really get to focus on what she wants to do career-wise after that. And so when when she goes to Hollywood and she's an assistant, it's another aspect of her failing, at least to her, because she must have big dreams of doing something, but yet she failed out of college, and now she is this D-list celebrities dog person assistant, who the dog pees on her. Also, that dog is ugly. That dog is butt ass ugly. Like, I'm not even gonna play. Okay, so just the fact that she has a sliver of hope of being famous for something, she really takes that to heart and really like hones in on it, which makes sense as to how she behaves like throughout the rest of the movie. Like, it makes sense, because for Paige as a character, she is deeply insecure when it comes to how people view her, how people value her, because she struggles with valuing herself really without having that external factor, without having other people to back her up and tell her like how amazing she is, how cool she is. Without that, she has a lot of self-doubt. And we saw that in college, just struggling to keep up. So for her to go to Hollywood and have like this whole situation of where she is grappling with just a little piece of fame and trying to hold on to it as much as possible, she does get extremely desperate. It does make sense. So then when Marco calls her out on it, because he does call her insecure, she slaps him, which we're like, oh my God, Paige slapped Marco, but it makes sense, because when you really think about it as a whole, as a character, Paige has always been insecure. She has never really been able to feel confident in herself without someone telling her that she's cool. She doesn't have the self-love. She doesn't have the self-worth to see that she is capable of being a lot more than what just people, but instead of valuing other people's perception of her, she doesn't really value herself. And so she's deeply insecure in that sense. And so when Marco called her out for it, she probably didn't know how to react. And so the first thing she thought she could do was slap him like that. That was the only thing that could come out of her, because it's so accurate that it scared her. So yeah, in a way, when we see Paige as a character throughout the show, it doesn't make sense. But when you really do think about her as a character and think about her like mentally and how she treats people and how she goes about her academic career and just school in general, yeah, it's very much on par with how she is. She's just a very insecure teenager. And obviously we see her and Marco in Degrassi next class. They're talking about a podcast and the zero tolerance policy, blah, 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 blah. I don't really care. Degrassi next class was so boring as hell. And I feel like that scene was just so calculated. Well, obviously because it was the focus of the episode, but I don't know. I didn't like the episode per se, and I didn't like how this was how we were getting all of our characters back too, in my opinion. The fact that Tiny was being discriminated against, that's absolute shit, and you know, I do not stand for that whatsoever, but I just feel like bringing in the characters surrounded around that issue was very I was like, okay, are we going to do anything else? Because we have a lot of things to uncover, because literally they're talking about the podcast to Lola, and I believe it was Frankie that was with her. If not Frankie, I think it was Shay. I do not remember who was sitting with Lola, but they were like, literally, they were just spouting about a podcast, and she was like, oh, don't make me slap you again. And he's like, please. And it's just like, that's where we left off at. I want to know that they've actually became friends, and this whole weird situation, it just didn't sit right with me. We could have brought that up in a different way to really see how Paige and Marco have rekindled their friendship and see Paige in a different light. But, you know, I mean, that's what we were working with. It was on Netflix. I don't know what else to say. But that's what I have for this video. If you like this video, be sure to like this video, comment below your opinions on Paige, or put in the comments below someone that you would love for me to do a deep dive on. I have a few, so if I already have it in my notes to do a video on them, you'll just see it. But if you have anyone in mind, please put it in the comments below. And until next time, stay magical. Bye.